All right, today we're going to break down the anatomy of a spiritual movement. We're winding the clock back to 1990 to look inside a really pivotal speech by the founder of Happy Science. Now, this wasn't just any old sermon. Delivered in Japan's Tohoku region, this speech was basically a blueprint for action. It diagnosed what he saw as society's spiritual sickness, and then it offered a cure.
So right out of the gate, he frames the central problem, and it's not economic, it's not political, it's a crisis of the mind. He's identifying this kind of spiritual sickness that he believes is gripping the entire nation. And as you're about to see, this diagnosis shapes literally everything that comes next.
So, what does this sickness actually look like? Well, the speaker framed his whole argument by drawing this really sharp contrast between two different ways of thinking he was seeing in Japan at the time.
And here it is. This is the absolute core of his diagnosis. He creates this stark comparison. On one side, you have what he calls the urban mindset. You know, cynical, shallow, materialistic, just full of doubt. But on the other side, he holds up the Tohoku spirit of the people he's speaking to as the ideal, sincere, simple, and most importantly, ready for faith.
Okay, so after laying out the problem as this deep lack of faith, the speaker presents his solution. And it wasn't some complex, 10-point theological system. Nope, it was a return to a single, fundamental belief.
This right here, this is the bedrock of his entire message. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with this one simple truth. He presents it not as just one belief among many, but as the foundational fact of existence. In his view, your entire spiritual journey clicks into place the moment you accept this.
And this just shows you the incredible power he claims this one belief has. With it, the world becomes a mountain of treasure, just brimming with meaning. But without it, that exact same world seems bleak and totally purposeless. It's like flipping a switch on your whole reality, all from one change in perspective.
But you know, just believing isn't the final step. And this is where the speech pivots, arguing that for a real transformation, you have to join the organization he founded, Happy Science. Becoming an official member, he claims, is an act that changes absolutely everything. Now, this is a fascinating claim, right? He's suggesting that your active commitment is spiritually way more valuable than just passive learning. It's not about how many books you've read. He's saying that the act of formally dedicating yourself to the path actually changes your spiritual reality in some really profound ways. So what are these profound changes? Well, he outlines 3 of them. First, once you're a member, there's no more escape. You are now on a path of relentless self-improvement. Second, your soul is spiritually integrated into what he calls the golden ray lineage, the central light of the whole movement. And third, and this is pretty wild, even your personal guardian spirit starts getting rigorous training from higher spiritual guides. So, with this new identity as a member, the speech shifts into a very clear and direct call to action. It wasn't enough to just sit around and learn and self-improve. Now, every single member had a mission.
And he totally anticipates the most common excuse he hears from his followers. Oh, I'm not ready, or I haven't learned enough to teach anybody. He doesn't accept that at all. He completely reframes it as just fear, calling it a hiding place for cowardice, and really pushes them to get past that self-doubt. And to help them overcome that hesitation, he gives them a super concrete, manageable mission, a simple 2-part weekly plan. Step 1, read one book to fuel your own understanding. Step 2, share what you've learned with at least one other person. Learn, then spread. It's a continuous cycle. He uses this really powerful metaphor to hammer the point home. Learning the teachings is like putting fuel in a car. It's absolutely essential. But hey, a car that's full of gas but just sits in the garage is useless, right? The whole purpose of the fuel is to make the car run. And in the same way, the whole purpose of learning is to power the act of spreading the message. And this is where the speech builds to its emotional climax. He starts to address the single greatest obstacle that he believes his followers are going to face on this mission. To illustrate this big obstacle, he tells a story. He talks about a tale where the devil is having a going out of business sale, selling off all the tools of his trade. You know, things like jealousy, greed, suspicion, all the classics. But there's one tool, this simple, worn-out little wedge, that's priced way, way higher than everything else. When asked why, the devil explains, that one is called despair. He says it's his most effective weapon
because once he can drive that wedge into a person's heart, any other vice can get in. Despair is what creates the opening.
So this sets up the crucial question, right? If despair is the devil's master key, the ultimate tool for breaking the human spirit, what force in the universe can possibly stand against it? The answer he gives is just one word: passion. He claims that a burning, all-consuming passion is the only force powerful enough to repel that wedge of despair, to keep your spirit whole and motivated, even when you're facing rejection and failure.
But look, this isn't just any old emotion. He argues that this specific kind of passion is a spiritual force. It flows directly from a deep faith in God, and it's fueled by forgetting about your own ego, your pride, and what other people think of you. It's a passion that's born from being completely devoted to a mission that is way bigger than yourself.
So, what can we take away from all this? This speech from 1990 is basically a masterclass in building a call to action. You define an enemy, in this case doubt, you offer a simple core belief, you create a clear in-group with a path for transformation, and then you give them a powerful emotional weapon, passion, to overcome that final obstacle of despair. It really makes you wonder, is that four-part structure the essential blueprint for turning a belief into a movement?